pjnet.tv, 9 p.m. Eastern Coast Time here in the United States, and you are watching PJNet Live, our bumper, and we're recording, streaming to Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And Andy Clapp standing by, chat room standing by, counting down to. Well, good evening and welcome to PJNet.tv. I'm your host, Coach Prasick, as we begin a brand new week here. Hey, by the way, if you are watching this on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, we are so glad that you paused scrolling long enough to join us. We hope that you'll stay with us. We especially invite you to watch the same program at the website, pjnet.tv, where our chat room is loaded down with people who you want to meet. Make some new friends. You'll really enjoy it. Every month on Monday, on the second Monday of the month, I presume. Yeah, that's what it is. Just looked at my calendar, folks. I never get that right. Andy Clapp visits us, and it's always a pleasure and a thrill, and he's always got some deep stuff for us, and we're going to bring him on board all the way from the great state of North Carolina, as I recall. Yeah. And we've had some dry weather down here. Your weather up there, tornadoes or anything like that, or everything okay weather-wise?
You know, we did have in May. It was right after Mother's Day. In May, we had tornadoes come through, and it was the craziest thing in the world. We had a hailstorm, and it was stacked up on cars like above the black of the tires, up to the rims. And yeah, it was a crazy storm. And we were my family was at the beach at that time, but that was about time that gas shortage hit us on the East Coast. And but yeah, other than that, I mean, we've had some thunderstorms. You know, we always wait to see what the hurricane season's going to bring us, because usually we got one or two or 12 that's coming our way any given year, and so that's where our eyes usually are, is to see what's happening down there.
I hear you. Well, Andy, we have several things that are going on at the same time. The weather's always going to be a problem, but in Florida, if you don't like it, it'll change in a few minutes. So it's we get along fine with the weather, even through hurricanes. But in looking at the world around us, the weather we can't control. And it seems as if there are so many things out there in our world that seem out of control, but they're not really. And I'm referring to, folks, I'm being a little bit ambiguous, or teasing you a little bit. Cancel culture. Andy, we take it for granted in Christian circles that we have our worship service. We're a long ways from those big city places that have all these problems, so those seem far away. But social media tells us that they're very real.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, social media right now it can hit anybody at any place at any time, and you know, we're living in a time where we're told basically to bow down and agree with, you know, what the masses say. You know, it's not far off from what Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego faced. You know, they were told to bow down, and they weren't going to do it. And what we learned from that, Coach, is that, you know, it was a cancel culture then, because they were trying to cancel Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and we see how that worked out. You know, they threw them in the furnace. The guys who threw them in died because it was so hot. They look in and there's 4, not 3. They tried to cancel Daniel. You know, they tried their best to cancel Daniel, and you know, they threw him down in the lion's den, and he was set up for that. And but God was there. God was bigger, and they tried to cancel Jesus on Friday, and he showed them on Sunday. So, you know, cancel culture isn't really new, but I think for us, it's unusual because of the magnitude of cancel culture right now. And I gave a graduate Sunday message yesterday. Was our graduate Sunday at church, and I was telling them that, you know, they are called to be leaders, and I used the beginning of Joshua. because Joshua had mighty big shoes to fill. You know, obviously Moses had passed, and here comes Joshua. And three times, and if my verses are off just a little bit, forgive me. I'm doing this from memory, but I believe it was Joshua 1:6 through 10. Three different times in that, the Lord told Joshua to be strong and courageous. And I was telling the graduates yesterday that if they're going to make it in this world, and if they're going to make it um, with a godly testimony intact and have godly leadership as part of their life, it was going to take strength that comes from the Lord, not from ourselves, because we wear out. And it's going to take courage that comes from the Lord. And I base that off of Hebrews 13:6. And he says, you know, I will never leave you nor forsake you. The Lord is my helper. He is with me. If the Lord is with me, what can man do to me? And I think that right now, you know, as Christians, we need to stand up for biblical truth, stand up for biblical values, but not live in fear of cancel culture, because cancel culture has existed, but it's always really failed if you look at it biblically.
Well, Andy, your picture's a little bit frozen up. I don't know if you can still hear me or not, but I wanted to just pause a moment to reflect on some things that you've said so far. And in terms of Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, and the others, that was a very clear cut case of right and wrong. Obviously, but today it's a little bit murkier than that. And I'm gonna see if you can hear me. What I'm gonna do is just briefly turn off your camera on this end, and that didn't work. But I bet if you did the same thing on your end, it would. But anyway, but the challenges that we as Christians face today with decisions is we're not being told to bow down and worship a graven image. We're being told to wear a mask for the good of everybody. We're being told that I'm borrowing from the chat room here, that CRT, critical race theory, is an approach to restoring decency and justice among races. And as Christians, you know, I don't think any of us would want to do anything but that. I mean, it would be the right thing to do, but when you start looking at the devil's in the details, there's a fly in the ointment, and we are seeing organizations such as the Southern Baptist Convention actually debating, should critical race theory be incorporated in our culture. And that's a tough one, because you read things out there and you say, gosh, you know, that's gee, that's right. You know, the slavery and, you know, bondage, and, you know, the slavery's wrong. And, you know, there have been injustices historically. Does that, you know, so that's where the questions get more difficult. What I'm going to do, folks, since Andy appears to be frozen up, okay, I'm going to take a little bit of a break here, and I'm going to try to restore that connection. So just kind of hang tight, and we'll be right back. Okay, I got you twice now. Okay. Um, okay, give me a second, folks. We are restoring. I've actually literally got you in here twice at this point. So, what shall I do? I shall press the button and see if the second one is the right one. There, you're back. Okay, Andy, I'll make a few adjustments as we go. While you were kind of frozen up, I don't know what happened there, but I was explaining the examples you gave, although true and useful and enlightening. Those were clear-cut cases of right and wrong. We are not to bow down and worship graven images. We know that. But the new cancel culture shames us for not wearing a mask, shames us for not striving for racial equity, parity, and justice if we don't adopt critical race theory. And we're shamed, you know, for that. And it's more difficult today to discern, you know, well, wait a minute, I want to do the right thing.
Yeah.
You know, but it's hard. It's not as easy today in the cancel culture. You know, we're supposed to, you know, we're in this thing, they call it what, Gay Pride Month. You
Well, the
know,
question is what is your righteousness for? And what I mean by that is right now we have a lot of people who are, they call it virtue signaling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think a lot of what it is people are trying to win the approval of man. You got to go back to Galatians 1:10. It
Mm-hmm.
says, am I
Mm-hmm.
striving to please man or am I striving to please the Lord?
Right.
And Paul says it, and this is how we attack cancel culture right now. Paul said, if I were trying to please man, I would not be a bondservant of Christ. And a lot of what you're seeing right now, coach, I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you, it's fake righteousness.
Mm-hmm.
That's
I
all
call it
I'll say.
claiming the
And
moral
here's what,
high ground.
well, it is, but think about it like this. It I, if I'm helping out people, then there is a biblical standard for me to follow when I help somebody else. Jesus set the example. Number one, through the Good Samaritan, that I reach out to people no matter who they are, whether they like me or hate me, because Samaritans were hated. So
Right.
when he used a Samaritan as his example, you know, that wasn't going to go over well. But number two, Jesus said, when you give, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of it now is for show. And if I'm going to be righteous, if I'm truly pursuing righteousness, I'm going to do what's right and not care if anybody sees it or if they don't see it. I'm just going to stand up for what is right. And what we're in right now is hey, look at my moral high ground, or hey, look at my righteousness on display, or hey, look at, I have the greatest level of thinking ever existed. And the fact is that none of that is based in holiness. There's your problem. Is
Well,
it based in holiness, or is it based in favorability and popularity? Is it based in basically self-preservation? Because that's some of it too, is self-preservation. And that's not going to work out well. I can tell you that right now. That will not work out well.
what about the
And,
edicts that came down from on high? Saying, well, you can hold a worship service, but you can't sing. I mean, it,
you don't want to know what I think about that, coach.
well, Andy, your church. No, it wasn't your church. It was another one. But they had. I know of a church that one of our family, PJNet family, attended, and they had a little get together. And lo and behold, in this very small church, all of a sudden, 7 or 8, 9 cases of COVID came up. So you
Yeah.
begin to question. Maybe the government's right for once. It's there seems to be no right. So where you've given us some good examples, but
Right.
we don't know what the next question is. What's the right thing to do? But I know this: whatever we do, we should do it in peace. We should have a peace about it and be
Yes.
confident that we're doing it. But
Yeah.
where's the reference point? Where's the verse that says, "Thou shalt wear mask"? Thou shalt not sing in church.
Well, I get the,
There's plenty
that.
of people that don't want me to sing in church. I comply.
Oh, they don't want me to either, coach. But I make a joyful noise. It's a noise, but it's
Mm-hmm.
joyful. Um, I mean, we're called to submit to authority unto a point that it does not change the level of our worship, or the source of our worship, or the direction of our worship. Where this thing has gotten out of hand is the distinctions. Like here in North Carolina, we're opened up basically now.
Finally.
But yeah, but we decided a long time ago that people have to make their own decisions, and we were going to do whatever we could do to reach people, however we could reach people, and let them make their own decision. And what we were going to do is take the gospel to them with whatever decision they made.
Mm-hmm.
So if they weren't comfortable being in a mass setting, fine. We're going to reach you through the radio. We're going to reach you through Facebook Live. We're going to reach you through devotional books that we sent out, that we wrote and produced and sent out to households. And just because there was a different time, there was no difference in the gospel. The gospel remained intact. And so what we did was said, okay, here's the situation that we're in. Now let's go beyond those situational boundaries, because we believe in a God who crushes boundaries. He always has, and that's how we approached it.
Well, you're getting me thinking here. I remember
Mm-hmm.
clearly after the presidential election,
Yeah.
I did a lot of introspection, and it occurred to me that the mission that I and we, as all Christians, are called to is the Great Commission, to share the gospel, to make disciples. And I asked
Right.
myself some real simple questions, and it really cleared the air for me. And it was, okay, does it say share the gospel if the president that is in office is
Mm-hmm.
favorable to, that creates a conducive atmosphere for that, or or if one comes in that makes it
Mm-hmm.
harder, or you don't like, or politically have to. So it doesn't say that. It says share the gospel. And I also realized that I won't call it a mistake, but I had to reprioritize, is how are we going to fix the broken culture? Are we going to pass laws? Are we going to enable legislation? Are we going to outnumber them in the House and the Senate so that we outvote them and subdue the other side? Is that what we were called to? No, I'm afraid not. Now, I still think we should prosecute fighting in that theater of battle, but I was looking at the government as the answer. And it never was, never will be.
Yeah. No.
But I said all that to say this. Okay, if there's a law that says you can't sing in church, does that change our orders?
No. No. And it's where you turn into for answers. Right now, we're turning too far into government, as you said, Coach, and too far into the world for answers. Our answer is Jesus Christ. We need to be turning into Him and turning away from this age and away from the world, because when we start reflecting more of Him, then that's who we're called to be. The thing is that you used some examples earlier with the racial things we have going on with the things with homosexual marriage and things like that, or Gay Pride Month. I'm sorry, but you mentioned those things, and we can stand up and we can protest it, protest it, protest it, protest it, or we can go show them Jesus
Mm-hmm.
and lead them to the one who they need. It's no different than John the Baptist, Coach. John the Baptist, when you look at him, he was he was standing there one day and he's preaching, and all these people are coming to him, and it's a crowd of people, and they're all from different backgrounds, different walks, but they all had the same question. They asked this question. They said, "What should we do? What do we do?" You want to talk about the biggest question in our world today is what do we do? And John the Baptist talked about repentance, and he pointed them towards the good news of Jesus Christ. He pointed them towards the gospel. He pointed to Jesus with his whole life. And you know why he was effective? Because it was based in humility. We are so misaligned right now with trying to be right that we've lost the humility that God is right and God is able. And winning arguments isn't always the most effective tool to leading somebody to Christ. I mean, that I told our church a while back, the world knows everything that we're against. When was the last time we told them what we were for?
Mm.
When was the last time the church stood up and said, these are the things that we stand for? Instead of what do we stand against?
Well,
I
you're
mean,
onto
I'm looking
something.
at
Yeah.
our own denomination right now is just battling it out. The Southern Baptists are just bludgeoning each other. And I've noticed, even Christians are bludgeoning each other on Facebook and social media like Twitter and stuff like that, and we're missing it. We're missing it. The Christian army is the only army in the world that shoots its wounded, and it does. It does, and it's not effective at all. But the thing is that we're at a time where the world's asking, what do we do? Because there's just uncertainty everywhere. Everybody's uncertain right now.
Well, an
Like
observation.
when you asked a minute ago, you said, what is the right thing to do right now? You know, like the mask, is it good? Is it bad? Is it, and we're all battling out these issues. But there's one thing I know to be good, and that's Jesus. I know one thing that's right, and that's Jesus. And we may come at it from different angles as to what we should do. But I can tell you the one thing we have to do. We have to base it in humility and make it all about Jesus Christ.
I'm fascinated with your comment that we're battling it out in the Southern Baptist Convention, and here's the headlines. Here's the narrative that you see in social media. Well, if you do that, we're pulling out of the convention.
Yeah.
Well, how about what you're saying is theologically wrong? It's false teaching. Let's get together and find out the truth. And let's go with the truth. But no, we say, I'm gonna pick up my toys and leave. That's our answer.
Yeah,
that's our counter.
We're doing a great,
we're taking our money with us, and you're going to starve without money. Well, what about in seeking righteousness? What about seeking the truth? That's not part of the narrative, is it?
Mm-hmm. Well, no, because it's become more about our will than His will, and that's where I think we're on a dangerous area right now, because if it's about us, it is destined and doomed to fail. Mm-hmm. But if it's about Jesus, it is destined to stand. And this has been, oh my goodness, this has been going on for 2,000 years. Even Gamaliel says in the book of Acts, he said, if it's of God, you may be standing in opposition of God. If it's of man, it's going to crumble. But Gamaliel's advice was, let it be, and let's see if it's of God, and if it's not, because if it's not, it's going to fail. But he warned them as they were persecuting the disciples. He said, if this is of God, you may be standing up against God Himself. And so right now, we need to be consumed with God's will, and honestly, with the message of the cross. Yes, the message of the cross looks foolish to the world. But Paul said that in 1 Corinthians 1:18. He said this message looks like foolishness to the world, but it is the power of God to those of us being saved. That the cross, the very place where the perfect Son of God gave His life for the mistakes that we committed, not Him, but the mistakes we committed, that cross is strong enough. That cross is good enough to atone for my sin, for the sins of those around me. That cross is the only hope that this world has. And it's not found in Washington, D.C. It was found at Calvary. And that's where our vision has to be.
I have neglected to take note of the time. We are way over, but I
sorry.
do not want to send you on your way without mentioning your book coming out. So tell us, as quick as you can, where we're at on your Christmas book.
October 12th is release date. You can pre-order on Amazon. Midnight Christmas Eve is the name of it. So grab a copy at Amazon.
All right. Well, Andy, sorry we had to cut you off, but we went a little long. I got
good,
involved in what you were saying. I really appreciate you, brother. All right. Well, folks,
thank you, brother.
Andy on tjnet.tv. Sorry, I got kind of caught up in the conversation there, and it was a good one. Folks, don't go anywhere. Oh, that's the view of the eagle's nest. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Preparing for what's going to happen in just a few minutes on the big screen will be Casper Stockham from the great state of Colorado. I've got to make some preparations for him before he gets here. But I'd like you to make some preparations by asking yourself two questions. The first one is simple. What is the boldest thing you've ever done for Jesus Christ? The second one may trip you up. How long ago was that? Folks, in facing cancel culture, we're going to have to summon and marshal some courage. So I hope that none of us will ever be satisfied with our answers to either of those two questions.